You say something sharp in anger, and right away you wish you could take it back. That feeling, it's a self-inflicted wound, a universal human challenge. The Roman Stoic philosopher Seneca put it bluntly in his work on anger. He wrote that anger is the most destructive of all emotions, a brief madness. And it ruins the one who holds it. That's not just ancient advice, it's a vital manual for modern life. So by the end of this, you'll have 25 specific Stoic strategies. Strategies to prevent anger from damaging your relationships, your judgment, your peace. We'll move from understanding why anger is a choice you make, to practical steps for creating space before you react, and finally to transforming irritations into opportunities for strength. How much of your daily energy you later regret? Anger is an opinion, that's the first thing. It's not something that just happens to you, it's something you do. The Stoics saw it that way. They said between an event and how you feel, there's a space. And in that space is your judgment. They called the event an impression, like a car cutting you off. That's the impression, the raw fact, but then your mind interprets it. It makes a judgment. That driver is reckless. They meant to disrespect me. This is unfair. That judgment, that story, is what creates the anger. Epictetus wrote it down. He said it's not events that disturb people, but their judgments about them. The event itself is neutral. It's your added opinion that gives it meaning. That gives it weight. Think of a small irritation, someone late to a meeting. The impression is they arrived after the agreed time, but the judgment might be they don't value my time. They're being inconsiderate, and that judgment is what tightens your chest, not the clock on the wall. That's the shift. You're not a passive recipient of anger. You're an active participant in making it. Your task isn't to stop the impressions of the world. That's impossible. Your task is to police your own judgments. To catch yourself adding the inflammatory story. When you feel that first spark, ask what opinion you just agreed with. What story you're telling yourself about what this means. Pull that judgment into the light that begins to dissolve its power. You start to see the space, and in that space you find your freedom. You could put a buffer between something that provokes you and your reaction. That's the second lesson. You pause, you create distance. The Stoics had a word for this deliberate attention, Prosochē. It means stepping back to watch your own mind before it gets carried away by a story. That space between the trigger and your reaction, they called it the cognitive gap, and your freedom is in that gap. This pause isn't just waiting, it's the most active thing you can do. It's your reason stepping in, so your emotions don't hijack everything. Seneca wrote about this in his letters on anger. He said the greatest remedy for anger is delay. Give yourself time, let the heat cool down. His advice was, when you feel anger starting, first command yourself to be silent. Don't let a single word out in that first wave. That simple delay creates the distance reason needs to come back into the room. So here's something practical. The next time you feel that familiar tightness, that flash of heat, you mentally say the word pause. Then you take 3 deep, deliberate breaths before you respond. This works in a conversation. It works even better in digital communication, where the temptation to send a reactive message is so strong. When you see that text or email that makes your pulse quicken, that's your signal. Pause, breathe, don't touch the keyboard. That tiny ritual builds the muscle of Prosochē. It widens the cognitive gap. Your prompt is to commit to using this pause technique just once before the day ends. It doesn't matter how small the irritation is. The practice is the point. A lot of anger is just a tax. We pay it for our own unrealistic expectations. That feeling of being let down, of things not going the way they were supposed to, it leads straight to frustration. The Stoics saw this. They said a main source of our distress is trying to force reality to match our personal rulebook, how people should act, how events should unfold. We get angry at the world for not following our private script, And this is where their core division comes in. What's up to us and what's not? Our judgments, our values, our actions, these are up to us. Other people's actions, traffic, the weather, the past, these are not. Anger is almost always a sign we're demanding control over something in that second category. We're insisting a person act differently, that an event should not have happened. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this constantly. He'd tell himself, when you wake up, the people you meet today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant. He wasn't being cynical. He was setting a realistic expectation based on human nature. He said they are like this because they can't tell good from evil. But you can, so when you encounter them, you won't be surprised, you won't be injured. He framed it like working with materials at hand, a carpenter with warped wood. The carpenter doesn't get angry at the wood for being knotty. They work with its nature. Your friend is late. The raw fact is they are not here, but the anger comes from the expectation you attached. The story that a good friend should always be on time, that they value your time less by being late, that expectation, that should, is your addition. It's your rule you're imposing on another person's behavior, something not up to you. The Stoic practice is to examine that expectation itself. Is it reasonable? Is it based on the flawed belief that others will always act the way you prefer? Releasing the demand doesn't mean you approve of lateness. It means you stop paying the emotional tax of outrage for a common human failing. You deal with the situation practically without the added storm. So here's a simple exercise. Before today ends, write down one expectation you hold for other people that often leads to frustration. Just one. Maybe your partner should intuitively know what you need, or that colleagues should always meet every deadline perfectly. Look at that sentence. See the word should in it. That's the source of the friction. The practice is to consciously soften that should into a preference, a hope, or just an observation of how things often are. This isn't giving up, it's choosing peace over a war you can't win. The Stoics have this practice. They say to imagine things going wrong. It's called Premeditatio Malorum. The premeditation of evils, and it's not about expecting the worst. It's a kind of inoculation. You mentally rehearse life's frictions, so when they happen, they don't ambush you. You've already met them in your mind. You've already decided to respond with reason, not raw emotion. Seneca wrote about this. He said each morning we should tell ourselves, today I shall be meeting with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness. That wasn't to start the day with dread. It was a vaccine. By anticipating the noise of human interaction, you disarm its power to surprise you. The shock is removed. The event becomes a predicted possibility, something you're already equipped to handle. It's like a fire drill. You don't do a fire drill because you expect a fire. You do it so if the alarm sounds, you don't panic. You follow a calm, pre-planned procedure. Premeditatio Malorum is a fire drill for your emotions. Take a long commute. Instead of just hoping for green lights, you premeditate. You visualize the heavy traffic. You picture someone cutting you off. You hear the horn, and then you see yourself taking a deep breath. You hear your inner voice saying, "This was anticipated. This is part of the commute. My peace is my choice." You pre-decide your response. The event might still happen, but the angry outburst doesn't have to. The sting is gone because you saw it coming. The goal is to turn potential triggers from emotional earthquakes into manageable events. So before today ends, choose one common irritation you'll likely face tomorrow. A long line, a chaotic moment at work, a family member's forgetfulness. Briefly, calmly rehearse it, see it happening, and then see yourself responding with patience. A quiet breath, a focus on what you can control. You're not inviting trouble, you're building an inner fortress, so when trouble knocks, it finds you prepared and undisturbed. Some things are up to us and some things are not. That's how Epictetus starts his handbook. It's the foundation of Stoicism, and it's the real filter for anger. Because if you follow that feeling back, you're usually angry about something that isn't up to you. You're trying to command the wind, and then you're furious because it doesn't obey. Anger is effort that's pointed in the wrong direction. It's energy spent on a fight you can't win. The traffic, the past, someone else's opinion, their choice, their mood, the weather, the economy, a mistake that's already happened. Those aren't up to you. They're part of that whole chaotic world of externals, and when you demand that they be different, you're inviting a storm. The Stoics said real power isn't found out there. It's found in the one place you're the absolute ruler, your own inner citadel. Your judgments, your values, what you want, what you avoid, and the actions you take. Those are up to you. Anger starts to fade when you stop shouting at the sea and start steering your own ship. Take a piece of criticism. The words that were said, the opinion that's held, the tone that was used, those aren't up to you. They belong to the other person. You can't control their mouth or their mind. That first column, the uncontrollable one, is full. But your assessment of that criticism, your decision to look for truth in it or to discard it as noise, your choice to answer with grace or with silence, your determination not to let it disturb your peace, those are completely up to you. That's the second column, the controllable one. The anger comes from living in that first column, from fighting a ghost. The calm comes from taking action in the second. So there's a simple exercise. Think of something recent that sparked irritation. Now, in your mind, draw two columns. Label one, things not up to me. Put in it everything you really had no command over. The other person's behavior, the delayed flight, the spilled coffee, the rude comment. Then label the second column, things up to me. Here you put your judgment about what happened, your decision to breathe before you speak, your choice to focus on a solution, your power to let go of that story of personal offense. Just doing this mental sorting starts to drain the charge. It moves you from feeling like a victim to having agency. You stop wasting your limited energy on what can't be changed, and you start investing it in the only place it can ever make a difference, which is within yourself. If you pull back, way back, to a satellite view of your life, how does that grievance look from there? Anger shrinks your vision. It makes one moment feel like the whole world. The Stoics had an answer for that. They called it the view from above. It's deliberately expanding your frame, considering the scale of time and space. So you see your immediate trigger for what it is, a tiny part of something immense. Marcus Aurelius did this constantly. In his private notes, he'd remind himself to take the higher vantage. He'd think about the cosmos, the countless generations before, and then, within that, our brief human struggles. He wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." That wasn't dark. It was a tool against the backdrop of a lifetime or human history. Does this irritation deserve the storm you're making? Take road rage. In the moment, it feels huge, a personal insult, a threat, but from the cosmic view, what is it? Two temporary organisms in metal boxes following set paths whose lines crossed for a second. From the lifetime view, it's 1 minute in decades, a blip you'll forget. The anger gives it a weight it doesn't have. The practice is to shift the lens. When you feel that heat, you step back in your mind. Picture the scene from 100 feet up, then 1,000, then from orbit. Streets become tiny lines. Cars are specks. You consider that in a few decades, both drivers will be gone. All that remains is the legacy of your character. So how important is this intersection right now? This doesn't excuse bad behavior. It drains the drama, leaves the practical thing to be handled calmly. Think back. Can you remember your biggest anger from 5 years ago? The one that felt all-consuming, that kept you awake, that seemed to define a chapter. Bring it to mind now from where you stand today. How important is it? How much of that emotional residue is left? How crucial was that event to who you are now? For most of us, the sting has faded. The details are blurry. The lesson might remain, but the fire is ash. That's the view from above, given by time. The Stoic practice is to give yourself that perspective now, in the heat, instead of waiting years. You borrow the calm of your future self to handle the present turbulence. By regularly zooming out, you train the mind to default to a wider frame. The small stuff stays small. And your peace stays large. Your time is the only currency you can't get more of, and every moment you spend angry, that's a payment for something you didn't choose to buy. The Stoics had this practice, Memento Mori. Remember, you must die. It wasn't about fear, it was about focus. It's the ultimate filter for your attention. Is this irritation worth it? This grudge, this flash of heat, is it worthy of your limited days? You have an unknown number of them. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself. He said, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, what you say and think. He wasn't being morbid. He was installing a kind of alarm clock. One that rings softly in the background, asking, is this essential? Because anger makes small things seem eternal, and Memento Mori reminds you nothing is. Think of Seneca's letters on the shortness of life. He argued we don't have a short life, we make it short, we waste it, and what's a greater waste than to lease out your mind to resentment? To hand over an hour of your one life to replaying a rude comment. The practice is to use the thought of life's brevity, not as a burden, as a lens. It immediately separates the trivial from the meaningful. Here's an application. You get a frustrating email. It's dismissive, unfair. Your first impulse is to fire back. You spend 30 minutes crafting it. Fuming, your heart rate up. Now apply the filter. In the context of a lifetime, or even this week, how vital is this? If you learned you had 7 days left, would winning this argument be a priority? Or would you close the laptop and call someone you love? The email hasn't changed, but your perspective on its importance has. The energy you were about to spend on conflict is now free. For connection, this doesn't mean you become passive. It means you act from choice, not from reactive waste. You might still send a calm, professional reply. But it takes 3 minutes, not 30, and it doesn't cost you your peace. The rest of that half hour is reclaimed for a walk, for reading, for silence. Memento Mori turns anger from a default reaction into a conscious choice, one you weigh against the value of your time. So here's a prompt. Sometime today, when a minor frustration comes up, pause. Ask one question. If this were my last week, would this still matter? You don't need a dramatic answer. Just let the question hang there. Feel how it drains the urgency from the situation. It leaves behind only what is real and what is worth your precious and fleeting attention. The person who angers you might just be wrong, not evil. That's a big shift. It's central to how the Stoics saw other people. They had this principle about human nature that nobody chooses error on purpose. Nobody decides to be the villain. People do what seems right to them in that moment with what they know, what they fear, their past, their flawed judgment. If someone cuts you off in traffic, they aren't targeting you. They're probably distracted or rushed or just a bad driver. It comes from a kind of ignorance, a lack of awareness or skill. Getting angry at that, the Stoics would say, is like getting angry at a child for not knowing calculus. The child isn't withholding it to spite you. They just don't have it yet. Marcus Aurelius wrote this to himself over and over. He'd remind himself when someone seems to wrong you, first consider they were compelled by their own beliefs. They can't see things as you do. They're acting from what they think is necessary or correct. He told himself to ask what opinion did they hold that made this action seem reasonable to them. That question doesn't excuse harmful behavior. It explains it. And explanation is the first step to dissolving the personal offense that feeds anger. You stop seeing the action as an arrow aimed at your heart. You start seeing it as a symptom of the other person's inner world. Take a common situation. A coworker dismisses your idea in a meeting, maybe with a sarcastic tone. The raw impression is their words, their tone. The default story we tell is malice. They want to undermine me. They disrespect my work. That story creates the heat. Now use the Stoic lens. Assume ignorance, not malice. What might be happening for them? Maybe they're under huge pressure from their own manager, operating from fear and scarcity. Maybe they misunderstood your proposal because they were distracted by another deadline. It's possible they have a deep insecurity about their own contributions and lash out to feel in control. These aren't good reasons, but they're human reasons. Their explanations rooted in flawed judgment, not a targeted plot against you. When you make that shift, something changes in you. The tightness in your chest loosens. The urge to retaliate or to brood gets smaller. You can address the behavior if you need to, but from clarity, not from simmering rage. You might even find compassion, which is the final antidote to resentment. So here's a practice. For just one day, make a conscious decision. In every frustrating interaction with a stranger, a family member, a colleague, you will consciously assume ignorance over malice. You'll say to yourself, this person is acting from a mistake, not from a desire to harm me. Watch what happens. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to let them walk all over you. But you engage with the issue, not with the phantom of their ill intent. That single day of practice can rewire a lifetime of automatic offense. It turns potential conflicts into puzzles of human psychology. And in that space, your reason and your peace stay under your command. How dare they? That question pulls you right back into the story of your own injury. The Stoic question is different. It's how can I respond with integrity, and the goal shifts completely. You stop trying to fix the past or control the other person, and you start focusing on the one thing you can shape, your own character in this moment. For the Stoics, the only true good is a virtuous character. Courage, justice, temperance, wisdom. An external event, no matter how rude or unfair, can't touch that. It's neutral, it's just material. What can damage your virtue is your own reaction. So the event becomes a kind of gymnasium. It's not an attack to be fended off. It's an opportunity to practice and display who you choose to be. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this. He said the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. An obstacle becomes fuel for the fire of your virtue. If someone is unjust, that's your chance to practice justice. If someone is intemperate, that's your chance to practice self-control. Your virtue actually needs these frictions to grow stronger. Think of a practical example. You receive an email from a colleague that publicly blames you for a team error. The facts are wrong, the tone is accusatory. Your first impulse, the non-Stoic response, is to fire back an angry reply. One that lists all their past mistakes, questions their competence, copies the entire team to set the record straight. That feels satisfying in the moment. But it's a character attack. It pours fuel on the fire. Now, what does the virtuous response look like? It starts with a pause. You ask the Stoic question. How can I respond with integrity? Justice demands you correct the factual record, but with fairness. Temperance demands you do so without malice or emotional excess. Wisdom suggests you first seek to understand, maybe a private conversation before a public rebuttal. Courage allows you to address it directly without fear of conflict. So your reply might be calm and firm. You might write, I saw your note about the project delay. I want to understand your perspective fully. Can we schedule a brief call today to review the timeline together? I've also documented my contributions, which I can share to ensure we have a complete picture. This response addresses the issue. It doesn't run from it. But it does so without character attack, without public shaming, without adding your own anger to the mix. You've used the obstacle as fuel. You've practiced justice by seeking truth, temperance by controlling your tone, courage by engaging directly. The other person's behavior is their gymnasium. Yours is your own response. So here's a reflective prompt. Think of a current, ongoing friction in your life. A small conflict that simmers. Now, set aside the story of how you were wronged for just a moment. define what a virtuous response would look like, not a passive one, but an active, principled one. What would courage look like here? What would temperate communication sound like? You don't have to execute it perfectly today. Just by defining it, you've already begun to shift the goal. From winning a battle to forging a stronger character, and that is a victory no external event can ever take from you. Anger leaves a mark, you can follow it back. The heat goes away, but the pattern stays, and that pattern you can look at it, like studying a storm after it's gone. The Stoics, they didn't just talk about controlling anger right then. They built a way to learn from it later. This is where journaling fits. It's a tool for that attention, Prosochē. It's a structured look back, a way to make an outburst into a piece of data. For your own growth, Seneca wrote about this in On Anger. He talked about a daily check. Each night he'd go over his day. He'd ask, what bad habit did you fix today? What fault did you stand against? How are you better? It wasn't about shame. It was about clarity, a forensic clarity. He was taking apart his own reactions to see where they started. You can use this for anger. The point isn't to blame yourself for losing your temper. That's just more anger turned inside. The point is to trace the chain. Calmly to find the weak link where your reasoning stepped away. There's a simple template, 3 questions for after the feeling settles. First, what triggered me? Just the facts, not the story, just the thing that happened. My partner cut me off while I was talking. A coworker presented my idea as theirs. A package didn't arrive. Write down the bare event. Second, this is the important one. What judgment did I make? What story did I add to that fact? This is where you dig out the opinion you accepted. For the interruption, the judgment might be, they never listen, they don't respect me. For the stolen idea, it could be, they're trying to make me look bad to get ahead. Write it down exactly as it felt. Seeing that judgment on paper pulls it away from you. It becomes something you can look at, not a truth you're inside of. Third, what would a wiser response have been? This isn't about a perfect thing to say. It's about the right action, using the control test, what was actually up to you. Maybe a wiser response to the interruption is to breathe, let them finish, then say, I'd like to finish my thought. For the colleague, maybe it's to talk to them later, one-on-one, to clear things up for next time. This step plants a seed for next time. It starts to rewire the reaction. Do this regularly and patterns show up. You might see your anger often comes from a feeling of disrespect or from a fear of being overlooked. That knowledge is power. It lets you see your triggers coming. You can get ready. The next time a similar thing happens, you've already walked a better path in your mind. The route is a little more worn. So the next time you feel that wave of anger, after you've paused, after the moment is over, take 5 minutes, open an app or a notebook. Ask those 3 questions, follow the trail back to the start. You're not deleting your emotions, you're becoming the one who designs them. Stoicism isn't about feeling nothing. It's about not being enslaved by destructive feelings. That's the core of the 11th lesson. The Stoics aimed for a state they called Apatheia. To us, that sounds like apathy. But to them, it meant something else. It meant freedom from the passions, not from all feeling, from those irrational, overwhelming storms of emotion. The ones that hijack your reason, the ones that dictate your actions. The goal wasn't to become a stone, it was to become the captain of your own ship. Even in rough seas, they saw a sequence in how emotions build. First, there's what they called a Premeditatio. A proto-passion, that's the initial involuntary jolt. The flash of heat when you're criticized, the sudden clench in your stomach at bad news, that's biological, automatic. It happens before you even think. The Stoics didn't blame you for that. It's human. The critical fork comes next. This is where you either give assent or you don't. You can take that initial spark and feed it with a story. You add judgment, you replay the offense, you imagine consequences, you stoke the fire. That process turns the proto-passion into a full-blown passion, a pathos. That's rage or consuming grief or paralyzing fear. Seneca called it a temporary madness, a state where reason is no longer in charge. Apatheia is freedom from being carried away by that second stage. It's the cultivated ability to feel the initial jolt, to acknowledge it, but then to choose not to pour gasoline on it. Your reason stays present, observing. Deciding you feel the irritation, but you don't become the irritation. Take a practical example. You're in a meeting. A colleague dismisses your idea with a curt wave. That first internal flinch, that's the proto-passion. It's there. One path is to feed it. You sit there fuming. You tell yourself they're trying to undermine you. You replay their tone. You start thinking of ways to discredit their next idea. That's building a passion, the passion of anger and resentment. The other path is to note the flinch. Breathe, let the feeling pass like a wave on the shore. You can then choose to engage with the content, to ask a clarifying question, or to just let it go and focus on the next point. You felt the feeling, but you didn't grant it command, so here's something to try. In the next day or two, when you feel that first spark of irritation, maybe in traffic, maybe in a conversation, make it a point of observation. Don't try to stop the initial feeling. Instead, watch for the precise moment your mind tries to turn it into a story. When that flash of heat wants to become a narrative about injustice or disrespect or personal offense. See if you can catch that transition point, and in that space, see if you can simply not add the next log to the fire. That's the practice of apatheia. It's not the absence of feeling, it's the profound presence of your own choice. The 12th lesson is about becoming resistant to anger, and it starts with seeking out small discomforts. It's a training program for your expectations, because so much anger comes from a quiet belief, the belief that life owes you ease, that you're entitled to constant comfort. To things going smoothly, to people behaving exactly as you wish, and when reality contradicts that, the result is frustration, then outrage. The Stoics had a direct counter to this. They called it voluntary discomfort. You deliberately choose a mild hardship, not to punish yourself, to vaccinate yourself against the shock of life's inevitable frictions. The Roman teacher Musonius Rufus talked about this. He said we should train to be comfortable with simple food, plain clothing, a modest bed, not because those things are good in themselves, but because the training is good for the soul. He argued that someone used to luxury becomes soft, easily upset by the smallest deviation from their routine. But someone who practices hardship becomes resilient. They develop an inner toughness, one that life's ordinary blows can't penetrate. Seneca echoed this. He would periodically practice poverty. He'd live on simple bread and water, sleep on a hard bed, wear plain clothes. He wrote that by doing this, he wasn't preparing for a life of poverty. He was immunizing himself against the fear of it. He was proving to himself that he could be content with very little, that his peace didn't depend on external conditions. This practice shrinks the sense of entitlement. It rewires your baseline for what you consider a hardship. Think of it like a muscle. If you only ever lift light weights, your strength plateaus. The first real challenge you meet, you strain, you struggle. But if you regularly train with heavier weights, your capacity grows. The challenges that once overwhelmed you become manageable. Voluntary discomfort is the weight training for your emotional resilience. You're building the muscle of endurance. So when life hands you an involuntary weight, a delayed flight, a broken appliance, a rude comment, you don't collapse into anger. You just adjust your grip and carry it. There are simple, modern applications. You could take a cold shower for the final 30 seconds of your morning routine. Not for an hour, just a brief shock. You consciously feel the discomfort, and you choose to stay calm within it. You could skip a meal, not for dieting, but to remind yourself that you can function, that you're more than your hunger. You could walk to the store instead of driving for a small errand, even if the weather isn't perfect. You could turn off the entertainment for an evening and sit in quiet with just your thoughts. In each case, the point isn't the act itself, it's the internal dialogue. It's you proving to yourself that you are in command. That comfort is a preference, not a requirement for your happiness. When you do this regularly, a funny thing happens. The small irritations of daily life lose their power to provoke you. The long line at the coffee shop is just a line, not a personal affront. The slow internet connection is a minor delay. Not a crisis. Your tolerance for life's grit and friction expands because you've chosen to welcome a little grit on your own terms. So the reflective prompt for the week is this. Choose one small voluntary discomfort to practice, just one. Make it something safe, manageable, but genuinely slightly unpleasant. Do it not with grim endurance, but with a sense of curious training. Observe what happens in your mind. Notice if, later that day, you find yourself less reactive to the world's small bumps. You're not seeking misery, you're building an unshakable foundation for peace, one chosen hardship at a time. Epictetus used to remind his students, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. So we can listen twice as much as we speak. That's the discipline of speech. Anger is a fire. It needs fuel, and our words are often the gasoline. In the moment, speaking feels like a release. It feels like control, but the Stoics saw it differently. They saw it as the point where a private feeling becomes a public conflict, where an irritation becomes a lasting wound. Governing your tongue isn't repression, it's precision, making sure your words are necessary, that they're true, and as Seneca said, at the very least, not harmful. When anger comes, there's this urge to articulate the injustice, to list the offenses, to make the other person feel the weight of it, but the words that come out then are rarely measured. They're exaggerated, they're accusatory, they're designed to hurt, they become weapons, and once they're launched, you can't call them back. The regret later isn't just about the emotion. It's about the permanent record your words created. Epictetus warned about this constantly. He said to let silence be your general rule, or to say only what's necessary and in few words. He spoke against vulgar talk, against constant complaint, against speech that served no purpose except to vent a feeling. For him, every word was a choice. A choice that revealed your character. Think of a common argument. It starts with a minor disagreement, but with each exchange, the language gets more absolute. Words like always and never start to fly. Past grievances get dragged in. The original issue gets buried under a landslide of hurtful commentary. That's anger using your voice. Building a prison for both of you. Now apply the discipline. The moment you feel that surge before a word leaves your mouth, you enact a rule of silence. You don't have to be silent forever, just long enough for the initial wave to pass. This silence isn't weakness, it's strength. It's you choosing not to be the instrument of your own anger. It creates space for your reason to re-enter the room. The practical step is straightforward. When something triggers that heat, you do not speak. You might say calmly, I need a moment to collect my thoughts. Then you step away, even if just mentally. You breathe. You let the chemical rush subside. That simple act of delay changes everything. It prevents the escalation. It lets you formulate a response that addresses the issue, not the emotion. So here's a prompt. Introduce a 10-second rule. The next time you feel agitated in any conversation, commit to waiting 10 full seconds before you speak. Count them silently. 1, 2, 3. Use that time to breathe and to ask one question. Is what I'm about to say true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? You'll find in those 10 seconds, the sharpest edge of the feeling often softens. The reckless sentence on the tip of your tongue loses its urgency. What remains might be worth saying, or you might find that silence was the most powerful response all along. This small discipline of the tongue builds a fortress around your peace, and it protects the peace of those around you. The Stoics thought of themselves as citizens of the world. A citizen acts a certain way, not as someone isolated fighting for their own piece of ground. They act as part of a whole, an interconnected thing. That's the principle of Sympatheia. The understanding that we're woven together, an injury to one part is an injury to the whole, and anger, when it's about vengeance, is like a hand deciding to punch the face for being too close. You're damaging your own body. The Stoic cosmopolitan ideal, this idea of being a citizen of the cosmos, it reframes every conflict. It asks you to step back from that narrow story of me versus them. To see the other person not as an adversary but as a fellow citizen, flawed, maybe mistaken, but part of the same social fabric you depend on. Marcus Aurelius meditated on this. He reminded himself that we're made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids, like the rows of upper and lower teeth. To act against one another, he wrote, is contrary to nature. And it is acting against one another when you're resentful, when you seek to harm. He would tell himself, what brings no benefit to the hive brings no benefit to the bee. So your anger, if it's purely about payback, it serves no benefit to the wider human community you belong to. It only introduces more fracture. Think of a family disagreement. Over an inheritance or a holiday plan, the default script is about winning, proving your point, getting your fair share. The anger fuels a battle where everyone loses, even the winner, because the trust is shattered, the harmony is gone. Now apply the cosmopolitan lens. You shift the question from how do I win to what solution preserves the health of the family unit. What action, even if it means conceding a point, maintains the bonds that will outlast this one conflict. This doesn't mean you become a doormat. Justice is still a Stoic virtue, but it's justice for the whole, not vengeance for the self. You might advocate for a fair distribution, but you do it with calm language that seeks agreement. Not with accusations that guarantee lasting resentment. In a workplace, it's the same. A colleague takes credit for your work. The personal vengeance script wants to publicly humiliate them, to make them suffer, but the citizen's script asks a different question. What action serves the health of the team and the integrity of the project? Maybe that's a private conversation to clarify contributions for the future. Or a calm correction in the next meeting that focuses on the work, not the person's character. The goal shifts from making them lose to making the team function with more honesty. You address the wrong, but you do it in a way that repairs the social fabric instead of tearing it further. So the reflective prompt is this: the next time anger stirs before you act, pause. Ask this: does my desired reaction serve only me, or does it serve the wider circle I'm part of? Your family, your team, your community, even just the shared space between two strangers. When you frame your response as a citizen working for the common benefit, anger often finds it has nowhere useful to go. It dissipates, and what's left is the clearer, stronger work of building something better together. The 15th lesson has this idea at its center: Amor Fati. It means the love of fate. It's borrowed from Nietzsche, but it fits with the Stoics. It's not passive acceptance. It's an active embrace. The provocation isn't a problem. It's the raw material. It's the fuel you use to practice the virtues you're trying to build. It's the ultimate reframe. It takes the Stoic idea of control to its conclusion. Since the event isn't up to you, your only real choice is your response. Amor Fati says, choose the response that welcomes the obstacle, because the obstacle is the gymnasium, and you are there to train. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this. He said the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This isn't magical thinking. It's a kind of psychological alchemy. You take the neutral event, the frustration, the delay, the difficult person, and you use your interpretation to transform it into an opportunity for patience, for forgiveness, for courage. The thing that seemed designed to block you is actually the path forward, if you know how to walk it. Think of a frustrating work delay. A project is stalled because another team is late. The default reaction is anger. It feels like a blockage. Now apply Amor Fati. You look for how this obstacle can become your way. This delay is your raw material. What virtue can you build with it? Patience, certainly, but also creative problem solving. Can you use this window to refine your own work? To anticipate future issues, to build a better relationship with that team by offering calm assistance instead of angry demands. This delay, which you did not choose, is now building a skill set. Composure under pressure, innovative thinking, skills you wouldn't have developed if everything had gone smoothly. The obstacle became essential to your growth. Or a personal irritation, a neighbor's loud music late at night. The raw event is sound, the default story is disrespect. Anger builds. Fati asks, how can this be fuel? It becomes raw material for practicing calm assertiveness, for crafting a respectful conversation, for setting a boundary. If the conversation goes well, you've built a better relationship. If it doesn't, you've practiced resilience. The noise itself hasn't changed, but your relationship to it has transformed, from victim to active, creative agent. So here's a prompt. Identify one current, persistent annoyance, a daily commute, a repetitive chore, a colleague's habit. Now brainstorm. How could this specific obstacle be used as training? What virtue could it strengthen? If it's the commute, is it a gym for mindfulness, for listening to an audiobook, for practicing deep breathing? If it's the chore, is it a practice in thoroughness? In presence, don't just list the virtues. Sketch one small, concrete action that turns the friction into fuel. This isn't about pretending the obstacle is pleasant. It's about recognizing it as useful. When you start to see provocations this way, a shift occurs. You stop waiting for a perfect, frictionless life to begin your practice. You realize the practice is the life, and every single irritation is an invitation to become stronger. Sometimes the best way to manage anger is just to avoid the match. That's the 16th lesson. It's a simple piece of wisdom. The Stoics wanted a tranquil mind, a life of virtue, and part of that is making intelligent choices about what you let in. They trained to stay calm in chaos, but they also advocated for prudence, for not walking into a storm if you can choose a calmer path. It's about knowing your own vulnerabilities. Arranging your environment to support your peace, not undermine it. Seneca wrote about this. He advised choosing calm companions, avoiding the frenzy of the mob. He saw that anger is contagious. We catch it from other people, from their agitated speech, their indignant stories, their constant outrage. Spend enough time in that atmosphere, and you feel your own pulse quicken. Your own judgments sharpen with a similar edge. He wasn't suggesting isolation. He meant selective association. You protect your mind like you'd protect a flame from a strong wind. Today, this applies directly to what we consume. The digital mob is always shouting. Algorithms feed on engagement, and nothing engages like outrage. That constant stream of conflict and scandal isn't just information. It's an emotional atmosphere, a drip feed of provocation into your nervous system. You might scroll through thinking you're just staying informed, but you're also training your mind, training it to look for threats, to expect conflict, to see the world as a series of infuriating injustices. That creates a background hum, a low-grade anger that makes you more reactive to the small frictions in your actual life. The practice is proactive. It's an audit of your inputs. Take social media, which accounts when you see their posts leave you feeling agitated or resentful, which news headlines stir up a sense of helpless fury. These aren't just posts, they are matches being struck near your emotional tinder. A practical step is a deliberate detox. For 1 week, mute those specific, outrage-driven accounts. Delete one news app from your phone. Commit to checking headlines just once a day from a calmer source. This isn't burying your head in the sand. It's lifting your head out of a sandstorm so you can see. You're not ignoring the world's problems. You're creating the mental clarity to address the ones within your reach, to address them effectively without being emotionally hijacked. The same idea applies to conversations. those repetitive, unproductive arguments with a family member about politics or a colleague about some past grievance. The Stoic move isn't to keep engaging in the same loop. It's to prudently choose not to enter that arena. You can change the subject. You can politely decline to debate. You can simply not offer the fuel the other person is looking for. You avoid the match, so here's a prompt. Sometime in the next day, conduct a brief audit of your daily inputs. From waking to sleeping, what are the consistent sources of unnecessary anger? The morning news show that starts your day with tension. The social media scroll at lunch. The evening call that always devolves into complaint. Identify just one consistent source and make a single, clear choice to reduce your exposure to it this week. Not eliminate necessarily, just reduce. See what happens to your baseline of calm. This isn't running from challenge. It's the wisdom of choosing your battles. So you have the strength to fight the ones that truly matter. Anger isn't just a thought, it's a fire in your system. You have to put it out through motion. So the lesson is to physicalize the anger, to release it. You use your body as the tool to discharge that raw physiological energy in a controlled way. So it doesn't stay trapped inside and turn into resentment or explode out as words you'll regret. This clears the space, then your reason can come back online. The Stoics believed in a sound mind in a sound body. They saw physical training as part of philosophy, not for vanity, not for glory, but for health. For discipline, a body that's strong and resilient supports a mind that's clear and calm. The teacher Musonius Rufus taught this. He said physical exercise was essential. It prepares the body to serve the mind without complaint, to endure hardship without breaking. When anger hits, it's a full body event. Your heart pounds. Your muscles tense, adrenaline and cortisol flood your system. That's the fight or flight response. It's ancient wiring. You can't think that chemical surge away. But you can move it through. Intense physical activity metabolizes those stress hormones. It uses up the energy your body prepared for a fight, a hard run. A session with weights, a brisk walk up a hill, these acts transform the energy. They restore a physiological balance, so your mind isn't fighting against a body that's still locked for battle. Think of anger as steam in a kettle. The thoughts, the story, that's the heat source, but the pressure, that's in the body. You can try to reason with the kettle. But until you release the steam, it will keep whistling. Physical exertion is turning the release valve. It's a direct outlet, non-destructive. Afterward, the kettle is quiet. Then you can address the heat source, the judgment, with clarity. So here's a practical protocol. The next time you feel that overwhelming surge, before you say a word or send that email, make a deal with yourself. You will do 10 minutes of intense physical activity first. It doesn't have to be at a gym. It could be sprinting up and down your stairs, a set of push-ups until your muscles burn. A furious pace on a walk around the block. The key is intensity. You want to match the inner fire with an outer effort that meets it. You're not going for a stroll. You're intentionally burning fuel. For those 10 minutes, your only job is to move, to feel your heart work, to sweat. Often, by the end, the sharp edge of the rage is gone. What's left is fatigue, and beneath that, a clearer perspective. The problem hasn't disappeared, but your relationship to it has changed. You're no longer a vessel full of explosive charge. You're a person who just proved they can handle intense energy and direct it purposefully. The reflective prompt is to plan ahead. Right now, decide on your go-to physical release. What's one activity you can realistically do almost anywhere to burn off that steam? Maybe it's jumping jacks in an empty room, a fast run, shadow boxing. Identify it, visualize yourself doing it the next time you feel overwhelmed. This preparation turns a reactive moment into a chosen ritual. You're not a victim of your physiology. You are its skilled operator, using motion to create the calm necessary for wisdom. Someone made you angry today. and that might have been your most valuable training session. That's the 18th lesson. It's about gratitude for the lesson itself, not for the unpleasant part, not for the unfairness, but for the raw material it gave you. The resistance, the thing you push against to strengthen your character, it turns resentment into a source of strength. It completes the idea of loving your fate. It adds a conscious, appreciative closing note. Marcus Aurelius did this. In his private writings, he thanked people, the ones who wronged him, the ones who challenged him. He wrote that the wrongdoer harms himself, but he also does me good because it gives me a chance to practice patience, to stay calm, to not be overcome by anger. He saw the difficult person as a sparring partner. Their behavior was the resistance his own virtue needed to grow. Without it, his patience would be untested. Just a theory, not a lived strength. This gratitude is a shift, a cognitive shift. You move from seeing the other person as an adversary, someone who took something from you, to seeing them as an unwitting trainer, someone who gave you something. They gave you the chance to practice. Think of a real example. You have a tense exchange with a customer service representative. They're unhelpful, they're curt. The default aftermath is to stew, to replay the conversation with frustration, to tell the story of how you were mistreated. Now apply the reframe. After the call, you take a quiet moment. You say mentally, "Thank you for that opportunity. You gave me a chance to practice keeping my voice steady when I wanted to shout. You helped me practice insisting calmly on a solution. You were the resistance. The resistance that made my composure stronger today." You're not thanking them for being rude. You're thanking the situation for providing the exact conditions you needed to train. This internal act of gratitude severs the chain, the emotional chain. It stops the incident from festering into a grudge. It marks the event not as a wound, but as a completed workout. The practical step is a nightly review. With this specific lens, as you reflect on your day, you don't just catalog irritations. You actively seek out one anger training moment. You find the friction, and then you articulate, even just in your mind, what virtue it let you exercise. Maybe a colleague's procrastination forced you to practice adaptability, to practice clear communication. A family member's criticism was the resistance. The resistance against which you practiced listening without defensiveness. You frame it explicitly as training. This does something to your memory. It rewires the neural pathway for that event, from a negative emotional charge to a neutral marker, a marker of growth. So here's a prompt for tonight. Before you sleep, ask one question. What was my anger training session today? Find one moment of friction, large or small. Then complete this sentence silently. I am grateful for that moment because it allowed me to practice and name the virtue. Patience, tact, forgiveness, self-control. That simple act, naming and thanking. It transforms the residue of the day. It means you end not with a list of grievances, but with a record of strength built. The person who provided the resistance may never know their role, but you will, and in that knowing you claim the only real prize, the only prize any interaction can offer, your own unshakable growth. Before you react, you have to ask what a measured response would be. What's actually sufficient? Anger has its own momentum. It wants to keep going. It wants the last word or the bigger punishment, the total victory. But that momentum, it can carry you right past justice, straight into excess. And for the Stoics, excess is a vice. It's a loss of your own balance. So this lesson, the 19th one, is about temperance in your reactions. It's about defining ahead of time what enough looks like. You draw a line of proportionality. Your response should match the wrong, not amplify it. This is where Stoic justice becomes action. Justice isn't about letting things slide. It's about fairness, even, maybe especially, toward someone who's been unfair. A fair response addresses the issue. It tries to correct harm or prevent it. It doesn't seek extra suffering just for its own sake. That extra suffering, that's where anger lives. That's the territory beyond enough. Take a practical scenario. You order a meal, it arrives cold, poorly made. The raw fact is a subpar meal. The proportionate response, the just one, is to calmly signal the server. Explain the issue politely. Ask for it to be remade or taken off the bill. That's enough. It addresses the wrong. It seeks a fair correction. The disproportionate response, the one fueled by anger, that looks different. Raising your voice, making a scene, insulting the staff, then going home to write a long, scathing review to damage the business. That's not justice. That's vengeance, and it takes far more from your energy, from your character, than the original mistake ever deserved. The Stoic practice is to make this calculation before you're in the heat of the moment. You predefine the boundaries. For common irritations, you decide what a sufficient response is. You decide what your purpose is. Is your purpose to fix a problem or to make someone hurt? If it's to fix a problem, your actions have a natural end. The problem gets addressed and you stop. If your purpose is to make someone hurt, there is no natural end. There's always one more dig, one more piece of evidence, one more person to tell. That path has no peace, so here's a prompt to consider. Look back at a recent situation where you overreacted. An argument, a work email, a family disagreement. Now, with the calm distance you have today, define what the enough response would have been. What single, clear action would have addressed the core issue? Maybe it was stating your boundary once clearly and then walking away. Maybe it was sending a 2-sentence correction instead of a 5-paragraph indictment. Name that sufficient action. This isn't about regret. It's about blueprinting. You're creating a mental template for next time. You're teaching your future self where the line of enough is drawn. And when you walk up to that line, you have permission to stop. Your work is done, your character is intact, and your anger, with no further task, it just dissipates. Life is a dojo. Every irritation is a sparring partner testing your skills. That's the 20th lesson. You see the event as a test of character. You frame each provocation as an exam set by life itself. To see if you've actually learned the Stoic lessons you've been studying. And this mindset does something. It externalizes the challenge. The test isn't about the other person or even the situation. It's about your own progress. It turns a personal affront into an impersonal opportunity. An opportunity for a demonstration of who you've chosen to become. Epictetus spoke to this. He said, difficulties reveal what we've learned. A wrestler only truly knows his skill when he meets his match in the ring. Your training in the quiet of your study is one thing. But the real measure is in the noisy, chaotic arena of daily life. When someone insults you, that's not just an insult, it's the match, it's the specific test question. The question is, can you remain undisturbed by the opinions of others? Can you apply the discipline of assent? Can you remember that another person's words only have the power you grant them? Passing the test doesn't mean you don't feel the initial sting. It means you don't let that sting dictate your actions or your inner state. You maintain your peace. You respond if a response is needed from principle, not from pique. That's a passing grade. Think of a practical application. You're in a team meeting. A colleague takes credit for work you did. The raw event is their claim. The old story is one of betrayal, of injustice. The test frame changes everything. You see this moment as the universe handing you your exam paper. The subject is justice and temperance. The question is, can you correct the record with fairness without malice? Can you seek what is right without being consumed by what feels personally wounding? Your task is to demonstrate your learning, to show your sense of worth isn't so fragile that it depends on public credit. That you can advocate for truth without needing to demolish the other person. So you might wait for a pause and say calmly, I'm glad you highlighted that part of the project. For clarity on the timeline, I handled the initial data analysis that section relied on. We can sync up after to make sure all the contributions are documented. You've addressed the fact, you've claimed your work, but you've done it without anger, without public shaming. You passed the test. The reward isn't their apology, though that may come. The real reward is the quiet knowledge that your character held firm under pressure. So here is your reflective prompt. Identify your biggest current frustration. The one that keeps cycling in your mind. Now consciously reframe it. Name it as a specific character test. Is it a test of my patience with this ongoing delay? Is it a test of my forgiveness regarding that past comment? Is it a test of my courage to have a difficult conversation? Write that test title down. Just the act of naming it shifts your relationship to the problem. You are no longer a victim of a circumstance. You are a student sitting for an exam, and you have all the training you need to pass. Sometimes the most philosophical thing you can do is laugh. That's the 21st lesson. It's about humor as a Stoic tool, not to make light of something serious, but to diffuse the heavy story anger tells. Anger turns a moment into a mountain. It makes everything feel so important. A quiet laugh can be like a pin. It pops that bubble, lets the air right out. This isn't about mocking. It's a disarming look at our shared human silliness. It's another version of the view from above. From up there, so many of our conflicts look a little ridiculous. Two adults in a silent standoff overloading the dishwasher. A furious chain of emails about how a document is formatted. The cosmic joke is how much weight we give to these passing things. The Stoics knew this. They weren't the grim statues we sometimes picture. Seneca wrote a lot about keeping a cheerful mind. He saw it as a sign of wisdom, to meet life's inevitable irritations with a light heart. Not because the problems aren't real, but because a cheerful mind is tougher. It's more flexible. It doesn't snap under pressure, it bends, and sometimes it finds the irony in the situation. That irony is your leverage. When you see it, you reclaim a kind of freedom. You step outside the drama for just a second, and that second can change the whole interaction. Think of a petty argument starting to heat up over where to go for dinner or whose turn it is to take out the trash. The tone gets sharp, positions harden. Now, instead of pushing harder, you offer a gentle joke about the situation itself. You might say, with a slight smile, future historians are going to love this epic debate over Thai versus Italian. Or, wow, we're putting a lot of passion into garbage logistics. The humor has to be about the absurdity of the conflict, not the other person. It's inclusive. It says, look at this silly spot we've both gotten into. That shared look can release the tension all at once. It resets the conversation from a battle to working together. It reminds you both you're on the same team, just lost in a trivial thicket. This won't work for every situation, of course, not for real betrayal or deep hurt. But for the daily friction, the minor power struggles, it works. It asks you to have enough self-awareness to see the pettiness in your own stance, and enough security to not take yourself so seriously. So here's the prompt. Next time you feel anger building, pause. Ask one question. Is there an element of the ridiculous here? Look for it. Maybe it's the disproportionate energy you're spending. Maybe it's the childishness of your own internal monologue. Maybe it's the sheer unlikelihood this matters in the grand scheme. If you find that thread of absurdity, just tug on it gently in your own mind. See if it doesn't make the corners of your mouth want to turn up. That inward smile is a victory. It means you've just passed the test of perspective. And you've disarmed your anger with its most unexpected antidote. A moment of clear-eyed levity. Anger is a time traveler. It brings back the past and it jumps ahead to the future. The trick is to anchor it in the now, the present moment, because anger isn't usually about what's happening right this second. It's about yesterday's argument still hanging around. Or it's about a conflict you're afraid will happen tomorrow. It's a story built from memory and worry. The actual present, the raw reality of it, is often very neutral. It's just a room, a breath, a sound, the physical heat in your chest, but the story you tell about it, that's where the fire is, and that story is a kind of time travel. The Stoics had a practice for this, Prosochē attention. It's a radical return to the present, noticing that right now, in this exact moment, you are probably safe. You are likely whole. The threat you feel is almost always a thought, a memory, or a fear. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this constantly. He told himself to confine himself to the present, to do the present task well, to let go of what's already happened and what hasn't happened yet. He saw how we load ourselves down with these imagined weights. And then we're surprised we feel so heavy, so quick to snap, but the present moment, when you actually inhabit it, is a place of clarity. It's where your reason has the most power. Think of a common spiral. You get a short text from a friend. The present fact is just words on a screen, but your mind leaves, it goes back. It remembers other times they were short. It builds a pattern, a story of disrespect. Then it leaps forward. It imagines the awkward conversation you'll have to have. It imagines the friendship ending. That whole storm is built in the past and the future. The anger you feel is for that story, not for the words you just read. So the practice is to cut that travel, to drop your awareness into the physical now. When you find yourself going over an old wound, you bring your attention back. You feel your feet on the floor. You notice the air on your skin. You listen for the most distant sound you can hear. You name 5 things you see: the blue of a mug, the grain of the wood, the light on the wall. This isn't running away, it's recalibration. It pulls you out of the mental movie and back into the tangible world, the world where you have some agency, where you can choose a clear next action from a place of calm. So here's a prompt to try right now. Wherever you are, pause the travel. Notice 3 neutral details around you. Don't call them good or bad, just observe the texture of a fabric you're touching, the specific quality of the light, a background hum you'd stopped hearing. For these few seconds, there's only this: no old grievance, no future worry, just the quiet reality of the present. And in that quiet, anger finds it has nothing to say. You can't control other people. What you can do is be the example. That's the 23rd lesson. It's a kind of quiet leadership. Your own behavior sends a signal. It sets a tone, and with anger, emotions spread. They're contagious. A calm voice in a noisy room, that consistent reason can act like a kind of gravity, pulling things back toward balance. This isn't about perfection. It's about making your virtue visible, so it becomes an invitation for others to meet you there. The Stoics, they focused on their own character. That was their proper work. Epictetus taught that your job isn't to control others, but to make sure you act rightly. Marcus Aurelius, he reminded himself, the best revenge is to not become like that, to not turn into the very thing that provoked you. Embodying calm, it doesn't mean you're condoning bad behavior. You're demonstrating a different standard, a higher one, and that often makes aggression look clumsy, out of place. Think of a team meeting, heated, tensions are high. Voices get sharp, someone makes an aggressive, personal point. The default is a spiral. Each sharp comment invites a sharper one. The anger spreads. Now imagine you model something else. When that point comes, you don't match the tone, you wait. You take a breath, one that's audible in the silence. Then you respond with a calm, structured question. You might say, I hear your concern about the timeline. Can you help me see which specific part is the biggest risk? That doesn't mean you agree. It means you're shifting the currency. From emotional accusation to practical problem solving, your calm acts as a mirror. It reflects their agitation back. Often that makes them self-conscious. It gives others in the room permission to step out of that fight or flight mode. The whole group's dynamic can pivot on that one modeled response. This applies everywhere. In a family argument, refusing to raise your voice can de-escalate a shouting match. With a frustrated customer, patient, clear assistance can dissolve their anger. Your calm isn't weakness, it's a disciplined strength. It says, I won't let your state determine mine. I have a different standard for how to be here. So here's a prompt. Choose one relationship where friction is common. For the next week, make a conscious decision. No matter how the other person behaves, you will model calmness. You'll be the one who pauses before speaking, who listens fully before reacting, who seeks to understand before being understood. Don't tell them you're doing this. Just do it. Observe what happens, not so much in them but in you, and notice if, over the days, the emotional temperature in your interactions begins to cool. You're not responsible for their change. You're responsible for your example. And sometimes that example is the most powerful argument for peace there is. A Stoic doesn't get angry at rain for being wet. Some human behavior is just like that. The 24th lesson is about lining up your expectations with how reality actually works. It's a deeper kind of acceptance, not just giving up. It's an active understanding that frustrations, delays, the flawed things other people do, they aren't glitches. They're standard features of this complex, interconnected world we're in. The Stoics called this living in accordance with nature, and nature, for them, included human nature. With all its beautiful, messy imperfections, this idea comes from their understanding of the logos, the rational principle that orders everything. From that view, everything unfolds from cause and effect. Traffic jams are the natural result of many people needing to move at the same time in limited space. Bureaucratic delays are the predictable outcome of complex systems. Systems with many checks, human error is inevitable. For beings who are learning or tired or distracted or afraid, to get angry at these things is like getting angry at gravity for making things fall. You're not protesting an injustice, you're protesting a law of physics, and that's a battle you will always lose while exhausting yourself completely. Marcus Aurelius thought about this all the time. He reminded himself to accept what nature brings, to welcome every event as both familiar and destined. He wrote, "Whatever happens, happens as it should. If you observe carefully, you'll find this is true, not in a mystical way, in a causal one. The event is the sum of all the forces that came before it. Your coworker's sharp email is the product of their stress, their upbringing, their current fears. The delayed train is the result of weather and infrastructure and schedules. To see it that way is to see the world as it is, not as you demand it to be. So the practical step is a shift in labeling. You stop seeing a long queue as a personal insult, something orchestrated by the universe. You start seeing it as a predictable occurrence. In a world with many people and limited service points, it is what happens sometimes. That doesn't make the wait pleasant, but it removes the extra layer, the optional layer of suffering, the story that this shouldn't be happening to you. That story is where the anger comes from. The raw fact of standing in line is just a fact. Here's a simple phrase to practice. When you face a common frustration today, the slow internet, the forgotten item, the spilled drink, say it quietly to yourself. This is what happens sometimes. Say it with a tone of observation, not defeat. You're not approving of the situation. You're just acknowledging its place. In the natural order of a complicated world, you're aligning yourself with reality instead of straining against it. And in that alignment, you find a quiet strength. The strength that comes from no longer arguing with what is. Holding onto anger is like drinking poison and hoping the other person dies. That's the lesson. It's about forgiveness, but a different kind, stoic forgiveness. It's not saying what happened was okay. It's not about making up with them or even telling them. It's a private thing, an internal act of letting go. You're releasing the poison you've been carrying. Because resentment, that constant replay, it doesn't hurt the person who wronged you. It hurts you. It's a toxin, and you brew it in your own mind. You drink it every day. Stoic forgiveness is deciding to put the cup down. Seneca saw this. He wrote that anger punishes itself. the one holding it suffers the most. You're the primary resident of your own mind, so when you fill it with bitterness, you're the one living there. The other person might have moved on, they might not even remember, but you're keeping it alive, and it costs you your tranquility. So forgiveness is an act of self-care. It's wisdom. It's you deciding your peace is more valuable than the story of your grievance. Here's the distinction. Forgiveness isn't about their action. That's in the past. That's not up to you. Forgiveness is about your judgment now, your future desire. It's you deciding to stop the negative judgment that fuels the resentment. It's you letting go of the desire for vengeance or for things to have been different. Those are internal states. They are up to you, and they're the things poisoning your calm. To forgive is to withdraw your consent from that story, to stop feeding the fire with your attention. There's a practical way to do this, a letter you never send. You sit down with a notebook, you write a letter of forgiveness to the person, you detail the hurt honestly, you express the anger fully, and then you write your decision to release it. You state you're letting go of the charge for your own peace. You're not excusing them, you're freeing yourself from the weight. When you finish, you don't send it. You might read it aloud to an empty room, you might burn it or tear it up. The ritual is for you. It's a physical enactment of an internal release. It marks the end of one story so you can begin another. So here's a prompt. Think of one person you're holding resentment toward, from long ago or recent, just one. Now ask a simple question. What does holding this charge cost me today? In mental energy, in lightness, in peace, don't answer it right away. Let the question sit. Then consider what it might feel like to mentally, privately, release that charge. Not because they deserve it, but because you deserve the space it occupies. That consideration is the first step, the step out of the prison of the past and into the freedom of your own chosen peace. 25 tools, each one for a different part of the storm. We saw anger first, what it really is, a judgment, a choice you make in that gap between something happening and your reaction to it. Then we learned to create space, to pause, to breathe, to just delay. We worked on perspective, widening the lens, seeing the bigger view, expecting reality instead of fighting it. Finding the training hidden inside an irritation, and then we moved into action, choosing a measured response, modeling calm, forgiving for your own peace. This isn't a checklist, it's a toolkit, something you live, a daily practice, applied philosophy. The real work, it happens in the quiet moments, in between. In the habits you build, the expectations you soften, the stories you decide not to tell. Marcus Aurelius had a thought that ties it all together. He wrote that the mind adapts. It converts the obstacle into its own purpose. The impediment to action actually advances the action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Your anger, every provocation, that's the raw material. That's the obstacle, and your trained mind, your practiced reason, that's what transforms it into patience, into strength, into clarity. The obstacle doesn't go away. It becomes the path. So where do you start? Not with all 25. That's too much. Choose one, maybe two. For the next week, pick the single lesson that stuck with you. Maybe it's the 10-second rule, waiting before you speak, or assuming ignorance, not malice. Maybe it's the nightly review, thanking your sparring partners. Integrate it slowly, let it become a reflex, a new default setting, and watch how that one change starts to alter your days. This is the freedom Stoicism points to. Self-mastery, it's a quiet confidence, knowing your peace isn't for sale. It can't be taken by outside events. You can only give it away yourself. You have the tools now. The rest is practice.